Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of MWF Talk with me, David Rhodes. I am joined today by one of the hottest commodities, I guess we could say, here in the MWF. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kaos Keith.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So, tell me, man, how does it feel to grow up in this and then finally get to be a part of it and, I guess, see dreams come true for yourself?
Well, it's definitely a big thing for me. Growing up watching my dad wrestle, it's always had a part in my soul. It's something I couldn't get out of if I wanted to. Even if I couldn't wrestle, I'd still have some part in it. It's part of my life. And I try to be humble about everything, make sure, I'm not above anybody else or nothing like that. Or just try to stay humble and happy to be here,
All right. So, how long have you actually been wrestling full time now?
About 4 years.
About 4 years. And before that, I know that you guys would do little pre-show bits before, the shows would start and everything. You and your brother would go out and you guys would perform things that the rest of us would sit in the back and go, I wish I could do that kind of stuff. And and still some of the stuff you do now is even things that we sit back and look at and go, man, I wish I could do that kind of stuff because I can't springboard. I've never been able to springboard. I'm too fat for that. I'm too old for that at this point. And to watch you do it, I'm like, man, I wish that was something that I could do. So tell me, what's something that you've sat in the back and you've watched guys do, and then you went, I wish I could do that.
To be big and lift people up, man. I've always been a smaller guy growing up, always. And, every grade that I was in, I was always the small guy out of the class. And so watching wrestlers as I grew up, but big bodybuilders, they're picking people up over their shoulders. I couldn't do that. I had to make another way for myself. I had to, watch from the faster people, the more high active flying people.
Right. Okay. So
I did want to be able to do the strong stuff, but I just couldn't.
And I've sat back sometimes and went, man, I wish I could lift this person or throw this person like that, and I've never been able to do that. And I think a lot of guys that power game is something that they want, although they never get. What's one of your favorite things to do when you're wrestling? What's a move or something that happens in the ring or something that you're like, yes, this is every time I love this is what I like. That's what I want to do. And give me some kind of example of something like that.
A super kick. I mean, that's my favorite move ever. You watch Shawn Michaels do it, and it's fast. It's out of nowhere. It's unpredictable. I love that move. So that's what I've adapted to learn.
And we've seen you throw that a time or two. We've seen you also do some different types of moves, like the Cape Rana, which I've been on the receiving end of, which for all you people that are not familiar with the technical terms of things, Cape Rana would be also known as the lion salt. So the middle springboard backflip onto the opponent. That's something I was never able to do, although I could do the backflip. I never trusted myself enough to land on somebody, and I landed on my head a lot and did a lot of things like that. And I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to leave this to the young guys who can keep doing it. So that's something you love. Who is a person that you enjoyed being in the ring with? Like when you wrestle them and you're like, every time you're in the ring with this person, you're like, yeah, this is going to be a good match. I'm going to have fun with this. This is...
Well, of course, one of my favorite ever matches was you, but a person that, because that took me to another level. You did, for real, it took me to a whole nother level. But my favorite to look forward to was Hanson. When I feuded with Hanson, I felt like it was just such a good concept, big guy versus little guy, and
almost a David and Goliath.
Yeah.
I've been in the ring with him several times. He's a big guy that doesn't know the word no. He's willing to go as far as he can go physically, and then try to still keep going past that. And that's is something that I've watched him do for years now. And he's a beast of a guy to be in the ring with. He'll throw you around because he's a power lifter.
Yeah,
he can do that kind of stuff. And sometimes I pick on him a lot about how big he is and stuff. For people that don't know, he's kind of about as wide as a bus. I mean, he's a very big dude.
Yeah, large.
So, what is one of your, I guess, favorite matches? Like when you look back on it and you're like, okay, this match set the bar for me moving forward, and like doing things to that nature. Like I always go back to Brandon Powers' retirement match. Like, that set the bar for me. Like, we did things in that match that I didn't do with anybody else, in ways that we didn't do it with anybody else, and that was like the bar for me. Like, I don't know that I ever peaked from that match. What do you think there would be a match like that for you?
Well, if there's a match like that for me, it's definitely got to be when I was tagging with Ricky the first time as a baby, with facing Hanson and Solar, and me and Ricky was our first title win. Whenever
So
I got the tag teams,
put you at the top of the mountain. You don't think you've ever surpassed that moment?
Well, as in match-wise, to go back and watch pleasingly, yeah, I do believe I have by this point. You know, I like your match with you. I believe that match was one of the best that I've had, personally.
So a lot of people don't know this, and it's something that we kind of keep on the down low sometimes, but I've heard a lot of people make alludes to it now and everything, but a lot of people don't know that since I don't wrestle anymore, that I've taken over the training for all the new guys or certain people that are still trying to make their craft better and stuff like that. And you guys, you are there almost every time, and you're one of those guys that you're striving. You're hungry to make yourself better every time. Do you think before you were doing your training versus after your training, regardless if it was me or somebody else, I know you grew up in the business and you were able to watch and see how people did things stuff, but do you think with training it's made you better, or do you think you've grown as a person that has made you better? Like, since the time you started until now, what do you think has really evolved you as a person to get you somewhere?
Well, yeah, training, practice makes perfect. So, you know, you're never too good to train. Whether you're the oldest in here or the youngest in here, you're never too good to train. Anybody can get in there and do it. And, you know, growing up in this, it did give me an upper hand, and physically being able to take this, knowing how to do it, it did give me an upper hand, but I'm never too good to train, just like nobody is.
So I've talked with the boss several times, and he's made mention that eventually he's going to have to step aside and he's going to have to let somebody else take over. And for a long time, it was something that I strive for. I was like, yeah, I want to be that guy. I want to be that next guy. And I feel like you are also one of those people that's like, yeah, I want to take over. I want it to be mine. Like, do you think that if you were ever to take over the ownership of the MWF or anything, do you think that it would change how you did things, like how you reacted to situations? And do you think it would put more of a strain on you? Do you think you would be able to handle it okay, or do you think that it would be one of those things that would consume you?
Well, if right now, it would probably consume me. If I took it right now and he couldn't do it no more, it'd probably overwhelm me, because, a lot of people don't see the stuff that he puts into it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's everyday basis for him, whether it's working on videos or, you know, just buying something for the place. He puts back money for that, his own money, not money that's made from here. And, you know, that's something that I couldn't physically take on right now, not physically, mentally, any of it. I couldn't. But in the future, of course, that would be a thing that I would strive for, and I think I would change my views on stuff. I think I would think more like him instead of trying to think more younger. I think I would, you know,
and now that I sit outside the ring and not in the ring, and I'm not an active competitor anymore, that I can see things different, like in a different light, if that's okay to say, because it seems very cliche. But I sit back and I watch how he does stuff, and he's a very deep thinker when it comes to certain things. And you can sit back and watch him, and he'll stand at the corner of a room while there's 7-10 guys in a ring doing stuff, and he just stands with his arms crossed and one of his hands on his chin, and he's just like looking, and he's just like looking at us. But I know he's not looking at us. Like, he's in deep thought on the other side of the ring. Like, you know, wherever he's at, like, you can see it. And that's something about him that I've always thought, man, he's quiet at sometimes, and he don't really talk to people and stuff. And then now that I'm outside and I look at it, I'm like, he's so deep in thought on show days that, like, he's always thinking about, all right, what about this? What about the cameras? What about the projectors? What about the music? What about the this? What about that? And that's where he's at all the time. And I know that you've helped him with some of that stuff, and you know, I've helped with some of that stuff, and it's great to take a little bit of a burden off of him. But I do feel like sometimes he takes on so much that he needs someone else to help him. And I've seen you guys step up and you're doing things and you're trying to help out. So off of that, onto some more fun things. What is something that you do before you go to the ring? A superstition or a ritual or something that you do every time you go out the curtains or before you go out the curtains to get yourself in that mindset?
Well, I'm always standing there right there at the edge, jumping up and down. And, Krista's always by my side. And I'm like, let's do this thing. And then about that time, just step out. I don't do nothing crazy. I don't beat my head on the wall or, nothing like that. Some people's got some crazy.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their thing, of course. But some people's got some
some things. I mean,
some far out stuff.
I've seen things in locker rooms that I didn't really want to see.
Yeah,
I've seen people do
definitely.
things, and I'm like, wow, I don't know what you were thinking when you did that. What would be if you had to make a top 5 of your best in-ring performances with certain people? Like, who would you list in your top 5? Like, you're in the ring with them, and you're going to have a good match with them.
Well, I only wrestled you, so I can't say you in that note. But I know Chris. He grew up around me a lot, and I know I step in there with him. It's a smooth sailing. I can lean back and just ride it.
Oh, yeah.
And then Hanson, me and him's always had that chemistry I was telling you about, and my dad. And then Ego. Anybody could work good with Ego. So you can't down on that one. And then the most of all is my brother Matt.
Yeah,
of course.
You guys have a chemistry that's beyond what you learned. Like, you guys grew up together. This. You guys have fought against each other pretty much your whole life.
Yeah.
So I would worry if he wasn't in your top 5 there of people. But with that being said, I also know a pair of brothers who have no chemistry together in the ring. And and they're the first ones to tell you, like, hey, do you have chemistry? And they're like, no, we don't, not at all. So we know that you grew up in the business. We know that you've been around the guys pretty much your whole life. We know what you do before you go out the curtain. We know the guys that you like to be in the ring with. Who is someone that you've enjoyed tagging with more than anything?
Of course, Matt. I mean, he's gold, especially being a heel. He's got everything coming to him. But on the same note, my funnest tag was probably the first time with Ricky, whenever we was a baby.
So you guys have had kind of, I guess the word would be a tumultuous relationship between you and your brother. And right now you guys are kind of on the outskirts. How does that affect your personal life when you guys are at home? Like, can you stand to be around each other? Do you guys you just not get around each other?
There's definitely tension there. Some we pass by each other a lot and ain't no words. It's just looking at each other. But it's one thing to another. The brothers are always going to fight, and at the end of the day, down the road, I'm not going to worry about it. It always comes back.
So somebody that's been, I like to say, who's looked up to you, kind of modeled himself after you, it's Devin Reed. How do you feel about Devin Reed?
Devin? Oh, I love him to death. He's growing and he's learning, and there's some things that it's hard to get through to Devin's head, but I love him to death. I mean, I'd do anything for him that I would anybody in here.
We can definitely see a lot of your mannerisms, your movements and stuff, and things that he does. Like he's taken a lot of your moves and he's kind of made them his own, but then also he's always trying to find some new way of doing something. Like, he doesn't want to just stay in somebody's shadow. Like, I feel like he wants to be his own person.
Yeah.
Do you get that same thing from him?
Yeah, he's just picking up my moves. It's just kind of, I'm the only high-flying guy out here. I'm the smallest guy out here, of course, besides Devin. Now Devin's taking that role, and he's just kind of, I feel like he's looking up to me like, I got to watch how you're doing it because you were the one doing what I'm doing now before.
Right.
So, but he's building into his own person. He's learning, and it'll go a long way in the future. It's not going to be nothing like none of the moves that I do or nothing like that. He's going to have his own thing.
Right. So, how many titles have you held here in the MWF?
I've held one. The
It's
tag
just a
team.
tag title? How many times have you
Twice.
held it?
Twice.
And you said the first time you felt like that was your big crowning moment was,
yeah.
And then the second time, if I'm not mistaken, was with Devin, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was with Devin.
And I know that you've had a long history with the men of business, and I know that at one point in time you were a part of them, and a lot of people would say that you've seen the light and you kind of got away from it, but you haven't really got away from it. Like, you're kind of still stuck with the men of business at your back. Am I right there? I mean,
yeah, because Matt, of course, he's a part of it, and brothers always go after each other, so I always got to watch my back for the men of business. You never know when, they'll do anything to get over on anybody. They're
sneaky underhanded crooks. Yeah, all right, yeah, whatever. Okay, so but right now they just added another member, so that makes them
powerful.
Three active wrestlers and a manager strong. I mean, how do you think that's going to fare for other people that might get in their way?
Well, I think on this side of things, we should probably power up and try to stop it, because you never know. They keep adding on people. They're just going to take over everything. They're going to run this place by the end of this if it keeps building.
Yeah, I mean, they've got someone in there with your brother who can go with the best of them. He's athletic. He's aggressive. He has a different demeanor about him than what a lot of guys do. They have someone like Aaron Ace, who is one of those guys that's a big guy, but he's not afraid to try things. Like, he's always coming up with something new to try. And then you've got the guy who's really trying to find himself in JJ Fett. And you put those together, and that's kind of a combustible thing. You get them together. But on the same hand, you've got people like the belt collectors who are kind of in limbo at the moment. There seems to be a little bit of separation with them and stuff, but you've had your fair share of matches with them as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Your cage match back at Brawl Games, I feel like was a match that was fun to call from my end. It was fun for the fans to watch. But how physically demanding was a match like that?
Oh, yeah, that was – I went home and I could show you pictures of it. I mean, my back was tore up. It all red, big scrapes. It's very physical, and I definitely wasn't moving around much the next day for sure.
So on that same note, what's the worst injury you've ever sustained while wrestling?
Probably in the pre-match show, whenever me and Matt was doing it, I hit my knee pretty hard, and I was limping around the rest of the night, but nothing too terrible. I try to be aware and not, I've never broken a bone in my body. That's a scary thought to me, to break a bone.
It don't feel good. I promise you that. I've broke several, and we can go ask Mikado how it feels to have the metal plates put into him in his ankle and his wrist for actually trying things in the ring. And if I'm not mistaken, one time he jumped off the top rope and to the floor and landed weird, and he broke his ankle, but he didn't stop. He finished the match out, and by the time he got to the hospital, a part of his ankle bone was actually in his big toe. It was floating.
I didn't even know that.
So and then the other time he was in a cage match and tried to do a moonsault and landed on his arm and broke his wrist arm area.
I remember that.
Had to have the plate put in there, and I mean, that's something you look at and you go, wow, this is like a very serious thing, that very physically demanding, very it asks a lot of someone. For someone who's young in the business, how would you advise them on staying safe or whatever?
I did my crazy bumps, and you learn from them things. Is it really worth it to do that crazy bump and get maybe the guys to pop for it? I mean, the crowd might pop, but they ain't gonna remember it in a year. And that's how I've gotten that beaten into my head. To save yourself, it's not worth it for that injury. Do you want to go 15 years or 5 years? That's what I've learned.
As an active wrestler, I wrestled for 8 years. And then after 8 years, I had some medical conditions that kind of went, all right, hey, you have to stop. And you said you've never broken anything, and you kind of had a bum knee for like a couple of days off of whatever. And to me, that's amazing, because I've talked to so many guys who have wrestled for a year and been like, oh, I broke my nose, or I landed weird and I messed my neck up for days, and so you're kind of like a unicorn right now. You're kind of that majestic being who's been able to kind of elude things and and get away from stuff and not have to worry about what was going to happen to him. But I know as a performer, it's always in the back of your head. Like,
Always.
when you do things, do you think of what could happen, or do you just go, well, I'm just going to hope for the best?
Well, it depends really. Like, if it's a big crazy flip, but yeah, I think like, what if I go back? I probably don't think so much with a smaller injury or something. I think more of my neck and stuff, because to break a bone, that's bad, but you heal from that. I worry about the neck and head area, because that's where everything goes wrong. I mean,
yeah,
you're
know all
well
about
aware
it.
of
Yeah.
it. Yeah, of course.
So if you weren't wrestling, what do you think that you would do?
Oh man, my life would be crazy. I love wrestling. I mean, I don't know what I would do. Play basketball all the time. I love to play basketball, but I'm not good enough for. I wasn't gonna make it. Get no league or nothing.
Right.
The wrestling. It's a passion that you have to feel that in your soul. Not anybody can come in here. Of course.
When you're not at a wrestling show and you're not doing stuff for the rest, do you discuss things with the missus? Does she get tired of hearing about it, or
get tired of hearing wrestling?
Mine does. I know that she does. I'll wake her up in the mornings and she's like, "How'd you sleep?" I was like, "Let me tell you about this. I had this thought," and she's like, "Oh, great, here we go, right off the bat, first thing in the morning. You're gonna talk to me about wrestling." Is that kind of how it is with you?
Yeah, to a point. Yeah, I mean. She all the time saying I'm ignoring her and stuff when I'm watching my wrestling videos or whatever. It's just because I'm get so zoned into it, man. Like, you tune out to everything else. Like, that's what you're thinking of, and that's where your mind goes. And sometimes it's
wrestling's an all-consuming thing. I think it's kind of like a sickness. Once you get it, you're kind of stuck with it.
it's stuck with it.
So, but do you have anything that you wanted to? Say, get off your chest, words to the fans, anything like that? I'm going to leave the floor to you for a few moments here.
Well, yeah, I appreciate everything to the fans, definitely. I mean, without them, we couldn't do this as a team. So, not just individually, as a whole, a big thank you to the fans.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of MWF Wrestling Talk with David Rhodes. The living legend's going to sign off here, and once again, thank you to Kaos Keith for being on this episode with us.
And thank you for having me on this episode. I do appreciate it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us.